decided to start making these videos just to kind of share a little bit about myself to the people that know me. Because, I've always been a surface level kind of guy, so I don't get too deep. But I thought this would help everybody understand because I do have really unusual questions from some of my friends, some of my brothers and sisters. But, I wanted to share a little story about this. I'm not sure if you can tell what this is, but it's actually a paper made Ninja Star. And I'll share a little bit more about this, but I've gone through life knowing that I had certain strengths, knowing that I had certain abilities that most people don't have. And I've never been one to like school. I get bored very easily. So I dropped out 10th grade. I was out. Every time I've had a job, I go so high and then I realize, this isn't getting me anywhere. And I think it has a lot to do with the challenges. I didn't feel challenged in school. I didn't feel challenged in my jobs. And I realized that I have a very different mentality. I don't care to be in a box. It's when somebody tells me, hey, you need to be in that box, it's kind of hard for me to do that. Some of you know me, like, that I'm not one to kind of stick to the rules per se. And not that I mean to break them, but it's just, I guess I don't like limitations. So, I'm not saying that I'm like a lawbreaker, which, anyways, it's about just having limitations. I don't like to be restricted. So I've always been one to reach out. And, I thought this is where I need to be, where I'm at today as an entrepreneur. I didn't realize this because I was never taught, not in school, not by my parents. My dad kind of told me, you actually have the mind of like a salesperson. What a compliment, right? I think what he meant was I was very good, because one of the things that I realized maybe before even the story started was that when I was very young, I mean, we're talking 3, 4, 5 years old, I was always negotiating. Like I would say, hey dad, can I get that toy? No. Well, what if I mow the lawn? Can I get the toy? No. And there are certain toys that he wouldn't let me get, like, I don't know, just more dangerous toys. They're not really toys. They're more like survival gear. But we lived in El Paso, Texas, which is just on the border of Mexico and Texas. The border of the United States and Mexico, right across the way from Juarez. And that's actually where my parents are from. But, I always try to negotiate for things as a kid. And actually, I see it in my daughters too. They do the same thing with me, which I love. I'm a little too stubborn for them to get their way. They do sometimes. But I do enjoy that they actually at least try. They don't take no for an answer. They're like, we'll give it another shot tomorrow, which I admire very much. I think everybody should be that way. Never give up. So this story starts, I guess I was thinking of when I first thought of, the very first time I realized, or if I was to think back today, when was the first time I actually exercised this entrepreneurial mentality? And it had to have been when I was 6 years old. Now, I don't know if you guys know what this is, but I'll get back to that here in a little bit. So when I was 6 years old, we lived in El Paso. We didn't have very much money. My parents were from Mexico. So in those days, which was the 80s, mid 80s, I guess my dad he had his engineering degree, didn't make very much money, especially El Paso. If anybody's been to El Paso, they know that they don't make a whole lot of money, at least for being here in the United States, mainly because it's right next to the border. So people from Mexico are willing to take a smaller paycheck than people here in the United States. So that drove wages down. But I don't, that's neither here nor there. Just part of the story was that we were going to a thrift shop, I remember. And one of the things that I was learning in elementary school, I don't know if it was kindergarten or first grade, but we were learning how to fold paper airplanes, which is where actually this comes in. And you know, in school you learn how to do those elongated ones, and you launch them and they like fly across the room, right? Out of notebook paper. And see, we didn't have that much money, so we had the same airplane for like weeks. But we were at this thrift store, and I found this book. You know, I was looking into I guess the book section. I like creativity. I liked stories, so mainly just storybooks about, you know, like children's books. And I saw this one book that showed how to fold several different airplanes, and so I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. I didn't know that there was more than one way, right? So I picked up the book. I took it to my parents. I said, hey, Dad, can we buy this? And he's like, yeah, let's go ahead. Okay. So I took it to, you know, we took it home, and, you know, we grabbed a bunch of notebook paper, kind of like this right here. And we started to, or I started to, you know, what I did is I went outside, because we had a little table outside that was square. And, you know, I asked my dad if we could put it inside of my room so that way I could have like a desk to work on. He's like, yeah, sure. So we brought it in, cleaned it off. And I remember I was excited about it because I had the paper, had the book, and I'm like, okay, I can do something with this. And so I started to fold all these different kinds of airplanes and flying them. And that was really, really fun. And at some point, you know, I guess in the book, I saw these little ninja stars. And I decided I was going to try to fold these up and just play with them. And I did. And I started to color them, kind of like this one. This one's actually colored with markers. And, you know, I started to play with them. I started learning how to aim them, how to throw them different directions, different ways, watching movies, you know, and just playing with them. And I got a little too carried away one day. I was indoors. I do have friends that I played with outside, but in the neighborhood, but my mom, I remember she was sleeping in the spare room. We had a 3-bedroom. I was the only kid at that time, and she was laying down on the bed, tired, and I was trying to play the ninja. So I would go by the door and like peek inside, and then I would throw it right at her, and she was like, what the fuck, you know what I mean? And so she woke up. And you know, I was giggling, and then I would like run by the door and then throw it again, and she was pissed. So right as I was running by the door, she actually, because they were right by her head on the bed, she actually grabbed one and just like launched it and nailed me right in the face. I remember I was crying, yelling. Nobody was there except for me and my mom. It was just my dad working, and it got me in trouble, right? So she was pretty good about it. She didn't want to tell me like, hey, don't make those, or she let me, you know, my kids let me do a lot of things that a lot of parents probably wouldn't do, like their kids do. Like, for example, wander around the neighborhood. Around that time, I would say it was safe. I don't know for sure. That's how I felt, because I ran up and down the streets just like every other kid in El Paso, and I never felt like I was ever in danger. But after you know, my mom, you know, with that incident, she's like, go play outside. And so I was like, okay. And I actually had like 20 of these, all different colors. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? So I just put them all in a box, and then I went outside, and I'm like, huh. And then all of a sudden I got this idea. I'm like, oh, I know what it was. I went to one of my friend's house, which is right across the street. His name was Alex. And I went over there, knocked on his door with this box of ninja stars, and his dad comes out and says, hey, what are you doing here? And I was like, oh, I wanted to play with Alex. Is he home? And he's like, nope, he's out with his mom. I was like, okay. I was like, all right, can you let him know that I came by? And he goes, yeah. And he picked up one of the ninja stars, and he goes, what's this? I go, those are ninja stars. I learned how to fold them with paper. And he goes, oh, really? And I go, yeah. He goes, you know what you should do? You should take these to all your friends and sell them. I was like, that's a good idea. So guess what I did? I started knocking door to door. Hey, you want to buy a ninja star? 50 cents. That's actually a lot. That's how much that folding book costs. So, you know, it paid itself with the first one that I sold. And I don't remember the details, other than I know it was summertime. It was extremely hot, and I was in shorts and a t-shirt, but I started walking several blocks, trying to sell these ninja stars. And, I sold my first 20. So I made my first $10 selling these door to door. And I remember I came home, I still had the box with me, and I came inside and I went straight to the room and I started making more. And I hadn't explored the whole book, but I started to now, I started getting my gears going, like, what else could I sell? And the book had also a way of folding napkins into these big flowers. Maybe I'll bring one next time for the next story, but these big flowers. And so I made a bunch of these, it was like a little manufacturing shop on my table. I just had a bunch of them folded out, cut it all together, and started piecing them together, and then coloring them, and then going door to door again, different sections of the neighborhood. I mean, we're talking about, this is a huge area that I would walk around. But I started making money with these. And when I ran out of paper, I went to my mom and dad and I said, hey, can we get some more paper? And they're like, wow, he's really having fun. And yeah, let's go get some paper. So we went, grabbed some more paper, and went back at it again, kept going. If I had a realistic number, I don't remember what exactly the amount of money was. Maybe that's something I can ask my dad. But I know that by the time they realized it, because like I was doing this day to day, and the napkins were running out and the paper was running out, and I was choosing, like, we would go to the store and I would tell my parents, hey, we're out of napkins. They're like, oh yeah, that's right. Let's go grab some more. And when we would go, they would pick up a big old, package of the ones that everybody gets, the cheapest, you know what I mean? The cheap white ones. And I'm like, no, Dad, let's not get those. Let's get the colored ones. They had all kinds of different pretty colors. And actually the big flowers sold very well with the mothers, and I could sell them for $1. So they liked them for like centerpieces and stuff like that. So I would get pink ones, purple ones, whatever colors they had in the packages, right? And I started to, he was like, what's going on? Why do you want the color one? We're not going to get the color ones. And I was trying to convince him, like, yeah, we need the colored ones. Those are the nice ones. He's like, we don't have money for those. We need to buy the white ones. And I'm like, okay. So couldn't negotiate my way into that one. But, we came home, grabbed a stack of napkins, ran to my room, and my dad's like, what are you doing with those napkins? I was like, oh, let me show you. And so I had a couple of them still left over. I was like, these are what I'm making. And he's like, so that's where all the paper and napkins are going? And I said, yeah. And he's like, okay, yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. He's like, what are you doing with them? I was like, well, I'm going to all the neighbors' houses and I'm selling them. He's like, how much money did you make? And I remember that I pulled out like all the money that I had under my bed, and I'm like, I made this much. And he's like, holy crap, what the hell? And he was kind of excited, but he was upset because he realized that I was making money off of him. In other words, I was going to sell these door to door, and then I would come back and I would ask him for supplies, right? So he was paying the supplies, and it was never coming out of my pocket. I don't know how much they were at that time, but I remember he was upset about that. He's like, I'm going to take some of the money out that you use for, napkins and paper to put them back. And I was like, okay. And he's like, yeah, let's not do that anymore. That's too dangerous. I don't want you around the neighborhood. And I was like, okay. So we stopped, but he was happy. He was like, wow, he made some money. So I remember at that time, I was always trying to negotiate myself to get a BB gun. There was a very specific one that I liked. It looked like the, what is it? The M16, I think it is, the M16. It looked very similar to that one. Very nice, powerful, pump action. And I know it sold for like a crazy amount, like $150 or something like that. And not that I had $150,000 to buy it, but that, I guess, because of my actions, my dad was like, you know what, let's go get you that gift. And so he got it for me. I think it was supposed to replace like my birthday gift, because usually whenever I wanted something big like that, like a bike, he would say, okay, we can get you this bike, but you're not going to get anything for your birthday. And I was like, deal. That was just the way it was. I didn't really care about birthdays or Christmas. It was more about the moment, just taking action, right? But so that was the story. I hope everybody enjoyed it. But yeah, a little bit about me. And I wanted to ask everybody, when was the day that you realized that you had the mind of an entrepreneur? Was it when you were a little kid, a teenager? And of course, I have more stories, but I decided to name this one The Little Entrepreneur because I was very young, very enthusiastic, and definitely an action taker. I mean, as soon as I was told, I went and did it. So it was great. I think it's fun to think about that, and I thought it'd be nice to share this with everybody. I hope everybody enjoyed the story. And what I would like you to do is actually comment below a situation where you were, I guess the first time you found out that you had the mind of an entrepreneur, that you realized that you were different from everyone else around you. And I would love to hear your stories. Let me know what you think, and I'm going to see if I can put out some more, and I appreciate your time. And I guess we'll see you maybe tomorrow. Take care. Bye.